Afternoon, everyone. My name is Jack Ahern, and I work with the UNC General Alumni Association. I want to thank you all for being here today to talk a little bit about work-life balance. And I want to thank you all for being GA members. Without members like you, we couldn't release content like this, so we're really excited about that. I also wanted to mention that this webinar is being recorded, and we'll send out a link once it's posted. So if you miss anything partway through, don't worry, we'll share the recording. I want to now introduce Audie Cashion, class of 1988. Audie is a business consultant, certified One Thing trainer, work-life balance coach, and the founder of the educational nonprofit, the World Peace Center. He has a diverse business and time management background with 31 years experience in international consulting, coaching, real estate investing, and brokerage. He earned his BA in economics from UNC Chapel Hill and has lived in Japan and Dubai. We're very excited to have Audie here. With no further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Audie.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about work-life balance, how to accomplish more by working less. Don't we all want that? Isn't that what really drives us to try to figure out how do we accomplish more by working less? So back in my day, whenever I was there at Chapel Hill, I was studying. It was my senior year. And the interesting thing was I was standing in the medical library and I was thinking, I need to be studying because it's exams. But I thought, had the shiny object syndrome, and I said, let me call my mom and dad and see if they want to have dinner tonight. So I call up my mom, my dad. Dad answers the phone. He says, hey, Cool Breeze. I said, hey, Dad. I said, hey, do y'all want to have dinner tonight? So they said, sure, we'll be down tonight. So they drove from High Point to Chapel Hill. We had a great dinner. And yet at the same time, I looked at my dad and I was like, Dad, we were sitting upstairs in my bedroom. And he was sitting on the bed. He's sitting right there. And I looked into his eyes and I said, Dad, what's going on? You don't seem yourself today. And he said, I can't handle the stress. I can't handle the stress anymore. And wow, I was like, somebody just punched me because I've never seen my dad say anything like that. He was a football player. He was military, got through dental school at Carolina, orthodontist, just like he was always the kind of get her done kind of person. Even self-proclaimed, he said, I take up the slack. And so that night, my dad drives home with my mom. And as he normally does, he went upstairs to sleep it off, up to the bedroom, has a massive heart attack and dies that night. So this is why I say I care so much about work-life balance. And this is what we're going to talk about today. And I want to thank you, first of all, because these are the challenges that you shared with us on the survey. So Jack sent out a survey, and these are all the answers that you shared with us about the problems that you're having with work-life balance. So someone came back and said, I'm a workaholic. Inefficiency leads to long hours doing other people's work. Condition that affects my energy levels severely. Shutting off my work brain to be fully present whenever I'm at home. Leaving work at work because work will never be completely done, and it interrupts my family time and my vacations. They acknowledge that. Finding time for me in light of the overwhelm at work. And finally, I work from home. So I have a small business, a life, a household, and a dog. So I'm constantly juggling to get things done. So with all the details, now this was just a few of the responses from each of you, but I wanted to share that as I looked at all these, I tried to be able to bring an umbrella around what is it? What is the number one challenge with work-life balance? And it's really about having more time and energy to do the things that you want to do without having all the stress. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And this is what you said in the survey that you really want. This is what you want. You want to be present with your family without thinking, stressing about work. You want to be able to have more time and energy to do the things that I enjoy. These are your actual words in the survey. Time to completely relax and focus on your family. You want to have clear expectations with those people who need to take on more responsibility on your team or hire additional associates so that you can indeed have work-life balance. So let's get started. What I'm going to talk to you about the goal, our goal for this workshop. So our goal for this workshop is to show you that focusing on your one thing and empowering your team to do the same is the key to living a fulfilling life, okay? And the only way to do this is by embracing the one thing, new way of thinking. Now, what is all this one thing? What is one thing? What is that all about? So If you want to know the details, I'm going to share with you now what that looks like. So we're going to go here and see this video. It's about a minute, and it talks about what is the one thing.
We want more. We want more from our work. We want our personal and family life to be satisfying. We want spectacular success at it all. And at the same time, we want less. The barrage of emails, texts, messages, and meetings distract and stress us. The idea of the one is of being single-minded, having a one-trick mind, becoming a one-trick pony. In The One Thing, New York best-selling authors Gary and Jay Papasan present the lies that block your success and how to identify and stop the thieves that steal your time and your money. They model the laws of purpose, priority, productivity. And finally, they teach you how the one thing will change the way you work, the choices you make, the results you get. Sometimes it's the first thing you do. Sometimes it's the only thing you do. But it's always the one thing that delivers extraordinary results. What's your one?
So if you'd like to know all the research that was done on the One Thing book, they took 5 years worth of research and compiled it together before they wrote the book. And so if you'd like that information, you can email me and I'll send you a link that has all the details about this, because they basically uncovered what are the laws of extraordinary success? What are the laws of extraordinary success? We think about laws like, what do we think about? Like law of gravity, right? It applies and it's applicable pretty much everywhere. You know, it's universal. So the things that we're going to be talking about today are not difficult. They're not complicated. They're actually very simple. So Gary Keller, again, the author of the co-author of the book, his big aha was this. He said, where I'd had huge success, I'd narrowed my concentration to one thing. And where my success varied, my focus had too. Let me read that again, because most of the time we think about, if I want to get more, I need to do more. I need to have more, right? But what Gary realized was this. He said, where I had huge success, I had narrowed my focus to one thing. And where my success varied, my focus had too. And let me tell you a little story about Gary, because it's very interesting background. He had a business and he had 6 people that were reporting to him. It was a small business. And he said to them, he said, look, I want us to be the best organization that we could possibly be. How could we do that? So on their weekly meetings, he said, I want you to give me 10 things that you want to accomplish by next week. And then we'll talk about it and how well you did on doing those 10 things that will help make us the greatest company, the greatest organization that we can be. And so after that, he'd go next week and he'd ask, okay, what about your list? And people would say, oh, I did number 10, I did number 9, I did number 5, number 4, number 3. He's like, well, what about the one thing? What about the one thing that you said was the top priority? He said, get to that. Some of his team members were like, I just didn't get to that. He said, okay, maybe it's too much. Maybe 10 things is too much. What about, okay, just 5 things. Just get 5 things, the top 5 priorities that we can do before next week. Same thing happened again with only 5 priorities. It's like, okay, this is ridiculous. Okay, guys, what's the one thing that we could do to become the best organization? And I want you to each think of that and then have that done by next week. That's how narrow he made that focus. And the interesting part about that story is, as Gary's, sitting there in the office, he's watching as his organization grows and as he continues to add people. And I don't know if you're familiar with who Gary Keller is, but he's the co-founder of Keller Williams Realty, which is the #1 real estate company in the world. So the things that he's done in practice in his business are actually applicable as well. It's not just concepts; these have actually proven out. And here's another thing: if you've heard of Indeed.com, it's the website that we go on if you want to share about being an employee, and you say this is a great company culture, or this one, they don't treat their employees well, or all that kind of stuff. Well, in Indeed.com, Keller Williams Realty was awarded the #1 in 2018 work-life balance company in the United States. And they're also the #1 team culture in the United States. So what we're talking about here is actually proven itself out in reality. It's not theory or concept. This is things that have been proven. And also it's interesting to know that the company that I report to as I roll up as a certified One Thing trainer is actually the #1 training company in the United States. So all these things have been proven out. So listen carefully, take some notes, grab a piece of paper and a pen, or take some notes on your laptop, whatever that looks like, because you're welcome to take screenshots of these quotes as well. I encourage that. Here's one personal example. So I was coaching a friend of mine who actually, he had been handling our financial services for many years, actually before I was even really doing that, thinking about that. He handled it for our family. And David said, he said to me, Audie, this sounds great. You know what? I want to live the twilight years of my life better than I lived the first half of my life. Okay, because he was thinking about his retirement. And he said, I want to retire early. And so I worked with him to reverse engineer what his retirement looked like. And what he did was, he said this, he said, the one thing helped me say no to a lot of good things in my life for the best things. I learned how to optimally prioritize my schedule, transform my business to fulfill more of my life's purpose. I'm excited about having more impact, contribution, and fulfillment with the people I love and the causes that I support. You can see, I just grabbed a picture off of Facebook. This is one of his profile pictures. He's been traveling to China, New Zealand, all around the world with his family and with other friends. They get together in community, and he does exactly what he does. He's actually even repairing some relationships that have kind of broken apart. And so he's really purposeful, doing photography and things that he really enjoys, that he's passionate about, while at the same time making an impact in the world around him. So that's his experience. And that's the experience that I want you to have. It's not about what he's doing now. It's about helping you find what does success look like for you, and then working backwards to get to that point. So I'd like for you to ask yourself, what in my life right now, what's not working at the level that I want? What's not working at the level that I want? So again, grab that piece of paper, write something down, and I'm going to prompt you with some ideas, okay? So there's 7 areas of life, okay? And I'd like to share with you what mine are, because it might help you start thinking in terms of, okay, what is it that I want to do? What do I want to change in my life? So my question for you is to ask yourself, what's the one thing I want to work on as a part of this webinar? What's the one thing I want to work on as a part of this webinar? So all these circles are holistic. It's all of us have all of these circles in our lives. And so think in terms of, okay, they're all in priority sequence. So first is our spiritual life. For mine, I have a morning ritual. So basically what I do is I read the Bible, pray, and I meditate. And then next, in my physical health, I eat a green smoothie every day. In my personal life, I ride my mountain bike. And that might sound physical to you, but it's actually something that jazzes me. Your personal life is how you put oxygen on yourself. It's your passion. It's something that you do, just because of the fun of it, for you personally, not to serve your family, not to serve the world. It's really about how do you energize your battery. Because when I was a kid, and I was 5 years old, I had a bike that was way too big for me, but I remember going back in the woods behind our house. It was somebody else's property, but I was in there back there cutting trees and making a trail and everything. And I was James Bond flying through the woods, saving the world and, saving these damsels in distress, just like James Bond did, because that was me. That was the persona that I felt whenever I was 5 years old. And so whenever I go back and do that, even today, I rode my mountain bike through the woods, and I was like, that's what taps into passion for me. And it really helps me and de-stresses me and makes me feel great about who I am, what I'm doing. Key relationships, that would be one-on-one dates with my leading ladies. Now, let me tell you who my leading ladies are, just like in a movie, right? But we're doing the real thing. So it's my wife, my 9-year-old daughter, and my 5-year-old daughter. Just last night, I was out and we finished up dinner, and my daughter, her 5-year-old, said, hey, Daddy, would you come out and draw on the pavement with me with our crayons? With our chalk. I'm like, sure, sweetheart. And, I've got these, just had a milestone birthday, and they made these handmade cards. It's that kind of connection with those relationships that are the most important to you is what I'm talking about, how to cultivate those. For my job, it's time blocking. I have to. I told you about shiny object syndrome at the beginning. I have to time block. For my business, it's lead generation. How do I generate the leads and find those people that I can serve to get out there to be able to do what I know I can do and help other people do? Finally, for finances, it's Financial Peace University. It's really about how my wife and I can work together as a team and go through and with our finances be able to not be stressed out whenever we hit that age of retirement and we want to think about what else do we want to do. Right now, I consider myself actually retired because I'm doing something I'm passionate about. And I hope you can tell that, because I'm very passionate to help you find your person and your purpose through your passion so that we can work together in helping you get to where you want to go. So ask yourself again, what's not working at the level that you want right now? Again, spiritual, your physical, your personal life, key relationships, either in your personal or your professional life, your job, what you do in the business, or your business, what you do on the business. Okay, and if you work for a company, then it's more of your leadership role or how you're attributing to making their mission statement, their purpose statement come to fruition, and then your finances. So those are the 7 areas I'd like for you to think about. Now, in the survey, whenever you guys responded, it was awesome because somebody said, we put that out there, that how to get 16 hours per week back so that you can do things for yourself. How do you find that time if you feel already overwhelmed and work too much for you right now? Okay, well, here's one principle, just one thing to take away. I want to ask you, you don't have to call yourself out, but how many of you are multitaskers? And I'm raising my hand because that's me. I remember even driving to Chapel Hill back from High Point, and I'm driving my stick shift with my knee, and I've got a pad over there, and I'm writing ideas down about class or school or the entrepreneur club or starting a business or all that kind of stuff. It was foolish, I mean, they say don't talk, on the phone, and here I am, like not even with my hands on the steering wheel. That's ridiculous, right? So I'm this great multitasker, right? But this is what I found out. This is what the research proves, that multitasking may seem efficient on the surface, but may actually take more time in the end and involve more error. So Dr. David Meyer was someone that's done a lot of research on this. He said that even brief mental blocks created by shifting between tasks can cause as much as 40% of someone's productive time. So if you have a basic 40-hour work week and you are able to say, how do I focus? How can I stay on task and not get interrupted? And I mean like anything, like a ding on your phone, somebody walking in and saying, hey, got a second? I got a great story to tell you because Les, who is the director of the One Thing training, was trying to put out the training manuals for the One Thing. And he knows this stuff. He teaches this stuff. He's the one that certified me. And so he was finishing up the workbook and he shares this. He's in there working on his office, getting ready to go on vacation because he's scheduled out his vacation. He's done a good One Thing task to be able to schedule his vacation out. Somebody walks in his office, says, hey, got a second? Of course, it doesn't turn into a second. He's wrapping up this email to get the production of these workbooks for the One Thing certified trainers. And he comes back to try to finish the final paragraph and he completely lost that train of thought. Have you ever experienced that? I know I have. And then he's trying to recreate this. Finally, he runs out of time. He's got to go on his vacation, and then he comes back and has to finish that, reconstructing that. It was going to put all this dominoes into production to be able to make this thing happen. So here's what it looks like, just to be clear on that. Again, that was the American Psychological Association was where that was published. Interrupted workflow looks like this. You've got your primary work, the thing that you're focused on, your one thing. Okay, and then there's an interruption, a distraction. You have to reorient towards that distraction, and then you have to switch back again, reorient to your primary work. Versus whenever you go down here, you're doing focused workflow where you start and then finish the task without that interruption. You can see up at the top that switch cost is what we call it. The switch cost is the cost of that period, that inefficiency between having that distraction in the middle and being able to finish and complete your primary work. That's a way to gain and take away with that. Think about multitasking as a lie. Multitasking is a lie of productivity. So remember that. And as you're doing that in your life or in your business, remember being focused and being present is really, you're gaining more by doing less. Does that make sense? Are you guys getting this? So how do you remain focused? Well, here's a new way. And I've done so much training before. I was doing this in college too, just like understanding what are the best practices out there. Well, this is a new way and a better way of thinking, a new One Thing way. It's about going small. Going small is this. It's ignoring all the things that you could be doing and doing what you should be doing. So if you're sitting there looking and answering emails while we're talking together during this workshop, that's multitasking, right? And you're not completely present with what we're talking about right now. You're not thinking about the ideas that are being shared to be able to build on those and to be better. So I encourage you. I want to be your coach. Let me be your coach if you will allow it. It's about realizing that the extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. Let me read that again. Going small is ignoring all the things that you could be doing and doing what you should do. It's realizing that extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. Now, what does that look like? Okay, let's look at that. If we know something's a law, just like the law of gravity, you know it's going to apply in all different areas. Well, the laws of extraordinary success, as evidenced in and researched in and validated by many bodies of research, the domino effect is something that happens in physics, right? You kick one domino and it knocks down, if those dominoes are lined up, many others, and it continues, right? And you get a lot of energy out of that, right? Well, here's another one. This is what's really cool, is there's something called a geometric domino progression. So a 2-inch domino can knock down a 3-inch domino, and then that 3-inch domino can knock down another domino that's 50% larger as well, and so on and so on. Well, what does that look like? Well, this is what that looks like. A domino geometric progression starts with one tiny domino, 2-inch domino. You just tap it with your fingernail. Then after 18 times of that domino continuing to knock down another domino, growing by 50%, at the 18th domino, it could knock down the Leaning Tower of Pisa. At 23, it can knock down the Eiffel Tower, a domino that's that tall. And then at 31, this is where it gets amazing. It's 3,000 feet, a domino that's 3,000 feet higher than Mount Everest. Then you get to the 57th domino, and from 2 inches to the 57th domino, growing by 50% each time, you almost get to the moon. Why didn't we say 58? Because then you're out into outer space, and then we can't comprehend that. It doesn't give us an order of magnitude. It just says, oh, but see, you're almost to the moon. So what I'm encouraging you right now is, in that tiny thing, what's not working at the level that I want right now, writing that down, okay, and committing to, I want to create a solution. What is my 2-inch domino for that? Then it's your moonshot, if you will. So you can think of your moonshot as, what do I want to look like? What do I want to have my life to look like at some point in time? You know, what do I want my family to be doing? What is that ultimate goal that I want to have? Do like David did, right? Remember in the beginning? So thinking in terms of what is your moonshot, but then we go back and we reverse engineer that. That's what's really cool. That's what's powerful. So what does this look like in a practical manner? Well, how many of you guys do a to-do list, right? So I know I do, okay? And maybe you have a love-hate relationship with it like I do. Like, I know I was doing this back at Chapel Hill. I was writing down all the things I needed to do in my classes. I'm sitting there writing this big list, and then I keep adding to it day after day after day. And finally, it just gets lost in a stack of paper somewhere. And I'm like, ugh, I can't do that. And I just felt so much condemnation and frustration and everything because my list just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. And then I wasn't getting through it. But here's one thing. I would actually, and I'll go, and sometimes I would write down whatever it was that I needed to do. But then I would have something that wasn't included on the list, and I actually did it. Then I would write it down and check it off to get myself that little dopamine hit to say, oh, I actually was productive today. But then you can go on those days that you look back and you feel like, I didn't get anything done today. Have you ever had those days? Well, this is a way to change that. So you put a to-do list together. That's fine. But then you ask yourself the question, what are the things that I should do? What are the things that I should do? And what I do is I actually put a little asterisk by it. You could circle them. You could do them in a different color, whatever that looks like for you. And then you take that and then you number those in that order. 1, what's the greatest priority? Number 2, the second greatest priority. 3, 4. And then you don't have any more than like 3 or 4 items that you're putting on your success list. A success list is much smaller than a to-do list. Okay. And then let's see what that is. How do you ask and know what that priority is? And that was one of the questions in the survey. Well, you ask what's called the focusing question. And I'd ask that you, and I invite you to do this, take a screenshot of this, write it down, whatever it is that you can, because if you can keep asking yourself this question, it will absolutely transform your life into an extraordinary life that you design. So what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Okay. Don't worry about the grammar, okay? Just think in terms of asking yourself this question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary, okay? Think in terms of that. Ask yourself that question. And you remember, I'm encouraging you to write things down. Here's the key. Research shows that individuals with written goals have 39.5% more likely to succeed. Individuals with written goals and weekly accountability are 76.7% more likely to succeed. Once you have in mind what that moonshot is for your life, then having written goals down, reverse engineering, going back from the moon back to your 2-inch domino, that's what you want to do, and then get accountability for it. So let me ask you a question. Does it feel like you've been actually drinking from a fire hose, right? Do you feel like this little girl? And maybe you've got some things that have come up that have popped up as a result of this. Well, here's the next step. As a special gift for UNC GAA members, I'd like to offer you a private coaching session on something specific that maybe you brought, something to mind that you want to deal with or you want to wrestle with and you want to talk it through with somebody. I'd like to offer that to you as a gift as a part of being a GAA member. And you just go to bookwithaudie.com. And I know we've got some questions that came up on the survey too that Jack did for us. And Jack, why don't I let you take it over?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me first say thank you, Audie, for that great presentation. I have been lucky enough to talk with Audie a couple of times, and I've heard some of those nuggets, and I just need to keep hearing them because I'm like, oh yeah, and it's nice to be reminded. So we put out a poll ahead of time to kind of get some of your questions. We had this question: how do I get comfortable turning off my work mindset? I feel the need to be available 24/7. This is something we hear a lot from alumni or just around, is especially with the smartphone. It's you always have your work email. So what are your thoughts on that, Audie?
That's a great question, Jack. I think it's fantastic because a lot of us, like one of the respondents there said, I've got my home office. How do I get away from it because it's in my home? Really, it's about setting boundaries around your time, and that's about time blocking. And what that means for me too also is to be able to shift your mindset, your frame of mind, whenever you go into that new time block. So for example, I was speaking at the North Carolina Association on Aging, and during the lunch session, I sat with this woman who was an executive director. And I told her, and I asked her questions. She was asking me questions about time, mastery, how do I do this and all this. And I said, oh, so what did you do? And she said, well, I used to be an executive director for a psychiatric hospital. And, if you don't know, those are people that are basically there to either not hurt themselves or hurt other people. And so it's a very chaotic atmosphere because they've got a lot of things that are going on. And I was like, how do you deal with that? How did you deal with that coming back to your home? It was a woman, by the way. And being a mom and a wife and loving your kids without having all that stress and all that's going on. And she said, what I would do is I would actually put on the suit that I would wear to go to work. And I felt like it was like body armor. Like I was in that role. I was in that persona. I'm executive director and I've got this almost force field so that I'm not taking on these things and taking them inside of me. And so she had this frame, this mindset change that whenever she got that uniform on, that body armor, if you will, she went into work. She was a different person. But then whenever she came home, she told her family, she set clear boundaries with them. And she said, please let me get out of my work attire before we start talking, so that she can get into her informal, casual clothes, so that they knew that shift had taken place in her mind, that she wasn't that executive director taking care of chaos and stress, but she was able to be present with them. A lot of times we need to be able to step into that mindset, how do we do that? And that's one way. Also, it's like, great, Audie, that sounds woo-woo. What are you talking about, right? So here's some practical steps. So what that looks like is this: use either online tools or even just basic pen and paper tools, putting together things that can help with clarifying expectations. You think about her example. She clarified expectations with her family so that her kids wouldn't run to her and grab her, loving on her whenever she's still stressed and kind of in her work mode. Pre-printed scripts. People need to, I've got a sales team that I'm going to be onboarding, right? And so helping them to know how to sell and market the way I do, what I do, and how I listen to people and try to feed back to them in the classy way that I want to be able to be represented by my team. So pre-printed scripts, frequently asked questions. Having a list of just frequently asked questions that people are interrupting you, asking you questions about. You type up that list and send it out to people, or keep it on a doc or shared Google Drive or something like that. Videos, checklists, help desk, classes, instructions. Hopefully these things will give you some ideas about what you can do, because there's actually tools, and you can put them online, already done videos that you can leverage your time that shows people how to do that. instead of having to do it every single time. So what I recommend in being able to find these things, these opportunities, this is golden, okay? Keep an 80% not doing list, a not doing list. What am I not doing? The 20% is the things that if you don't do in your job or in your role or in your business or whatever, in your practice, that's the things that if you don't do those 20%, you're basically out of a job, out of a business, or your practice goes down the hill. But the 80% of the other items are the things that, have to be done, but they're not as critical as the 20%. So think in terms of what is my 80% not doing list, and how can I delegate that to people? That the things that I can't do, the things that only I can do, right? I think about, I deal with a lot of dental practitioners, and, they're talking about cleaning their practice and things like that. And, if they're at a place and they need to do it that way, they can obviously hire someone or help delegate and make it a round robin for the people on their team. Just think of creative ways of how to outsource that stuff. Or, if you're trying to learn how to do something, Jack, you and I were talking about, hey, I know one thing that we're not going to do. We're not going to be IT techs, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you get other people that know the thing. It's exactly what you said, not the how, but you find the who that knows how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah, Audie and I were just talking about have similar lack of knowledge around computers, and when problems present themselves at work, I know the 3 or 4 people I go to, I'm like, okay, you know a lot more than I do, so I'm going to go ask you for help versus spending a lot of my time trying to figure it out and ultimately probably screwing it up along the way. This next question we have from an alumni is, how do you choose a priority when there's so many things and responsibilities that seem so important?
That's a great question as well. So we go back to that. What are the 20% things in my life? Like, I'm the only dad that can be a great dad to my daughters. I'm the only husband that can be a great husband to my wife. I know those are some absolutes. So those are priorities, okay? And, somebody needing an email tonight that's responded to them. I really need to be able to go out and be with my daughter, and being able to hang out with her outside, with her chalk, play with her. So it's finding out what are those things. And unless, and this is, Jack, you and I talked about this before, unless you have a purpose, you don't know what your priorities are. So let's look at what that looks like. So question, what percentage of a iceberg is above water? Jack, what do you think?
Is it 10%?
Yep, that's absolutely right.
Nice.
So depending on the salinity of the water, the density of the ice, all that kind of stuff, it's about 10% that's sticking above the water. Okay, well that 10% that was above the water wasn't what sunk the Titanic, right? It was all that other 90% that was underneath. It cut the hole in the hull of the Titanic. They thought it was nothing, but that's 90% below the water. It's the same as an individual or as a team or as a company. Unless you have that purpose down below, okay, and maybe some of you have seen Simon Sinek's his TED Talk on YouTube about why. He talks about having the why in a company, and that's why Apple has been so successful, because Steve Jobs said this. He gave everybody a purpose. He said, we want to put a ding in the universe. That's what Apple Computer, that was their kind of purpose statement whenever Steve Jobs was getting everybody fired up. So we have to have that same purpose statement in our own lives. And many people that I talk to, I would say 95% of the people that I go out and I speak to, and you don't have to say anything about this, do not have a purpose statement. And so if you don't know what your purpose is, you don't know what to say yes and what to say no to. Going back to our question, unless you know what to say yes and no to, then you don't know what to choose your priorities, right? Until you know that purpose, okay? And then above the waterline, which people can see, your productivity, be it an individual like you guys out there, or the company that you run, or the company that you're a part of. People can see how productive that company is. They can see the company culture. I went to get Apple. I bought a new iPad Pro, and I just said, wouldn't it be great if the whole world had a culture like Apple Computer? And they were like, yeah, it would. It would be magical. Wouldn't it? It'd be awesome. And I'm like, how, after Steve Jobs has already died and passed on, that it continues to have the same culture? Because they have that anchoring purpose underneath. And then above that is profit. What's one of the most profitable companies? I believe Apple was the first to hit $1 trillion in their what their stock valuation was. So it's that kind of thing that drives purpose. And we have to do that as individuals too, if we want to be those people of knowing what is our priority and how do we say yes and no to those things. And here's another cool thing. This is what I try to do with my kids and with my wife. So try to be creative in aligning competing priorities, okay? Think outside of the box, take it to a different level. So I love to ride my bike. I told you I love to ride my mountain bike. And then I also want to have daddy-daughter dates. Well, my 9-year-old loves to ride her bike too. So we got on the Greenway and we're riding on a Saturday. I actually have a date with them to be able to go into their world individually, my wife and my daughters individually, so that we can do the things that they want to do, because I want to have that. But then at the same time, this was a priority that she and I both enjoyed, rock climbing. She also enjoys that. My other daughter, she loves animals. So I took her to the zoo down in Pinehurst when we were there, just the two of us. She got licked by a giraffe that came down and licked her on the head and everything. And she were feeding them carrots. And it was magical. She loved it. She says, this is one of the best days of my life. You look for those serendipitous opportunities where you can do things that you can create those competing priorities, but aligning them to do your one thing. Next question.
How do I form boundaries with work, self-care, and goal setting?
Again, that's a great question. So all these questions are really kind of leading us to what I talked about, time blocking. And what does that look like? Okay, well, first you got to know what your purpose is, then you got to know what your priorities are, and then you go down and you do this, which is time block. First, you just take your calendar out. It could be your Google Calendar. It could be a calendar for the family on the wall, with the marker and all that kind of stuff. It could be a calendar that you print off. And then what you do is you time block your time off. That means if you take a Sabbath day for your faith or just to take a time off, you should do that. One day for every 7 days, you should always take one day off just to recharge your batteries, get away from whatever work it is. Don't always be working and in that mindset. You'll just burn out. Believe me, I know. I've been there. I used to do that. And then second is you want to, or part of that time blocking is your vacation. So people that are really successful and have extraordinary lives, they will time block their vacation so that they can work towards that and have something to look forward to that gets them excited. And then they have that time together. I know we just had a 10-day vacation back in July, going to Georgia and then to Disney World and all that kind of stuff with our kids. And it was magical. It was wonderful. Now there were challenges too. I mean, they're little ones. So, but being able to have that time to take completely off, I did. And I told my wife, I said, I can't just leave my computer here, but I didn't touch it. I said, I've got to take it with me just in case. Okay. So I'm a little bit anal on that regard. Number two is you time block your one thing. So all the different areas of those 7 areas of your life, you time block those things because they're important to you. It's just like a doctor's appointment. Think about it. If you're not taking care of your body, you wear your body out, you're not going to be good for anybody, right? Because you're not going to be here. And then you time block your planning time. That's reviewing about your purpose statement, looking at your week before. What do I need to do differently so that you continue to grow? That's how you get that 50% jump in productivity every time, because you're looking and looking back. You take example, I focused on dentists because of my story with my dad being an orthodontist. And I was like, how do I get in front of these dentists? They don't have work-life balance. So how am I able to get in front of them? Well, I wrote an article in one of the dental journals, and then I got it published in several dental journals. And actually at UNC School of Dentistry, we got it published there. So now people are coming to me and I'm getting leads that way rather than me trying to knock on doors, finding someone that really feels like they have a problem and they need help. It's really being able to do one to many. So think in terms of that with your work as well. And this is what my schedule looks like to give you an idea. And I'm happy if you want to email me and just say, hey, I'd like to see your Excel spreadsheet so that I can do it. But I've time blocked everything out in just a perfect week. Now, obviously, we don't have a perfect week. I've had other things that I've had to move these schedules around and all that kind of stuff. But at least in my mind, I know what I'm working towards. I've got a pro forma, if you will, for my week.
Another question we have, I believe, is from someone at the GAA staff, but how can we have it all, Audie? Life is short.
That's why, because you guys are so smart there. I love this question. It's a great question. So yeah, it is. It's like, you think about it, the wealthiest people in the world, whoever you want to think about, Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett or, the greatest athletes, like Michael Jordan, or Tiger Woods or whoever back in the day, those people that are the greatest in their own realm, have it all. They can't do it all. You really can have that. That's just, people think that you can have it all. It's really about knowing that the challenge of life is this. There's all you could know, there's all you could have, and there's all you could do. But the thing is, you can't know it all. No one knows everything, right? You can't have it all because it doesn't matter how wealthy you are. There's a limited amount of things that you can have, and you can't do it all. That triangle there, just by your being on this webcast, being on this webinar, this workshop, you're making choices. You've said no to certain things to say yes to this. So you have to choose, you have to prioritize what it is that you want to do in life and make those choices. So those little parts where the circle and the triangle intersect in those 3 different circles, that's the only thing that you can do. Those are your choices. So that's what we want to do. Think in terms of what are the choices that you want to make. Maybe you think it's great to, take care of, I was talking to a guy, I was standing in line in Carowinds. I took my daughter, Elle, Carowinds just for her special day, her daddy-daughter date. And I was talking to this guy, hey, so what's going on in your world? And he said, yeah. And he said, what do you do? And so I told him, and he said, yeah, I've got work-life balance in my work, but I don't have work-life balance in my life. And I said, talk to me about that. And he said, there was these 3 people that were taking care of the Little League for my son. And then all of a sudden the 3 of them quit, and I took on all 3 jobs. So now I've got 3 jobs that I'm doing on the outside of my work, and I just can't handle it. Thinking, is that a choice that he wanted to make, or was that a choice he felt obligated, or is it a choice that someone asked him to do that he should have maybe said, you know what, I can do this part, but I can't do all 3. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing I always think about too is everyone has the same amount of time, more or less. The most successful people in the world have the same amount of time that you do. So our last question here from another alumni is, how do I deal with communication problems when middle management is challenging senior leadership's goals? Because I see the negative impact on our customers who I train and support. So another way of saying this is, how do I keep the balance of power open and have transparent conversations?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I kind of have a 2-pronged approach to this answer, because first question would be, is it a safe culture? Is it a safe environment where senior leadership would value someone that was customer facing? Like, you have a lot of information and a lot of input that can help them to be able to make processes and systems much better, where there is that alignment, okay, with the senior management's or the senior leadership's goals and vision and direction, and then middle management where they're not translating in it and they're conflicting with each other. That creates a lot of chaos, especially for you and trying to be a customer-facing associate, teammate. And so my question is, if they are a safe group, then you can actually say and bring this up, raise awareness and say, hey, help me understand. I've got some feedback from customers. Would this be something that would be meaningful that I can share? And you don't want to jump your chain of command, because a lot of companies that's really frowned upon, and obviously so you'd want to go with your manager, but you would want to know, is this a safe person that I can trust, that I can really kind of close the door and have a real kind of one-on-one conversation with them? Or is it going to be somebody that's going to squash me and try to get me fired because I'm raising awareness around things that they don't want to have awareness raised, if that makes sense? So basically I say, if it's a healthy culture, then you can do it and have a great impact and make it a better company, make it more profitable, make a better work-life balance for everybody. It can be a better team spirit, all that kind of stuff that actually helps the company out. If it's an unsafe environment, and I've worked for a financial institution, a huge one that you guys would very well know, and it did not have that. It had a very, actually the person that was my second in command, I was leading the office, the team, everybody reporting to me. She was supposed to be my second in command. She was trying to get my job, and my manager was also trying to help her get my job. So it was a very unsafe environment. And his manager told me, he said, Audie, think about Big Brother's always watching. Just figure out that, you've basically got, cameras in here that you're going to try to, you have to be perfect, basically. It's a very stressful environment. But here's what happened. Finally, the truth came to light about what was going on. Both my direct manager and also this person that was my second in command, they got moved out. And then what happened was, we created this team spirit and we've been working on it, but the toxicity of what was going on was causing our team not to perform at the highest level. We became number one consistently out of 50 different customer assistance centers around the United States. And so that's what can happen. And it really made us a better example. And they had us talking about what we did as best practices for the rest of the teams to get to know. But because of these kind of two bad apples in there, that's what kept us from being able to perform at the highest levels. So you're going to have to determine whether or not, is it a safe place, or is it going to be a place where you just want to fly under the radar, keep your head down, and if it's so toxic that it's causing chronic stress and keeping you from having work-life balance, then do like what happened with me. So you heard my story with my dad having the massive heart attack. Back in 2012, I was working for this organization, and I got these escalation calls to keep it from going up to the CEO's level. I was the last stop. So my team would handle it. Then if they escalated, I would handle it, and then it would go to the CEO. It was a lot of stress. I got off 2 of these escalation clauses that they were threatening to take it up to the CEO's level. And I said to him, hung up the phone, and I said, I'm sorry, I just can't. This is not the scope of what our office does. I hung up the phone. I'm standing there. I can feel in my hands and in my arms, like going up there. I can still feel what that feeling felt like. Feel like an elephant that was standing on my chest. And I walk out, and the woman that's a receptionist, she said to me, Audie, you look horrible. Are you okay? And I said, I gotta go to urgent care. And then I said, no, I gotta go to the emergency room. I think I'm having a heart attack. And I was thinking as she was driving me there, I was like, my 3-year-old daughter at the time, my 9-year-old now, my 3-year-old daughter is going to be fatherless without having someone, a dad to grow up with. And I'm going to the hospital. And that night, my wife and I, when they were running tests on me to see if I had indeed had a heart attack, they were running tests, and my wife and I said, we've got to make a change. This is just not worth it. This is not worth it. I remember sitting in that hospital bed, and we were like reverse engineering what I do and what I help people with and why I'm so passionate about it, how to get out. That's where I made a call. That's where I did one thing. I started doing training and certification around this one thing training to be able to go and do what I do now, which is my passion. So I want to encourage you, don't get stuck. There's ways to get away from chronic stress.
Awesome. I think that was all the questions we had, right?
Yeah.
A little bit more.
Well, just one, if I can say just a kind of a little thing. So this has been Pennegar. I also worked with nonprofit organizations. I love people that are doing great work in the world, and nonprofits sometimes don't have those resources, so they have to be creative. But what Ben, he was a great leader. This is a positive leader. He said, the one thing engaged our team through purpose, which reduced individual stress levels, created higher engagement and a 4-year all-time high for our membership, okay, YMCA, which is basically sales, and also our capital reserves, which a nonprofit doesn't have profits. So that's what their profits were. So just wanted to share that so that it can actually, the one thing impacts not only individuals, but also teams.
Great. Well, we are just about done with our time today. I know Audie wanted to, again, extend an invitation to any UNCGA members to sign up for a private coaching with him at bookwithaudie.com. So you can definitely check that out. I want to, again, thank you, everyone, for being here today, or if you're listening to the recording, for making it all the way through and listening to this recording. Thank you for being GA members. We couldn't do things like this without your membership. And finally, want to just say thank you to Audie for all his time and effort. We've been working together for a couple of months now. It's been a real pleasure to work with Audie to put this together. Awesome.
Thank you, Jack. And I really appreciate what you do for the GAA. I've only reconnected recently, and I'm just like, I never knew the number of resources that were there, and I should have known because Carolina is such a great university. So I want to encourage other people to be a part of it and become members if they aren't already. So I'm definitely an advocate, having worked with you, Jack.
Awesome. Well, yes, you can definitely find out more about all our great resources on our website, or you can shoot me an email if you have any other further questions. But thank you so much.